Hi, it's me, Vicki Marie. So sorry, I was just having a little chat with. I'm calling you DMV, but what's your name? I'm sure you've got a real name or but yeah, we're just saying here in Spain, it's been 24, maybe 25 degrees today. I can't believe it's been 28 degrees in Scotland. My goodness. Because it's uncomfortable, isn't it, in the UK when it's too hot, because you don't have the fans, you don't have the air conditioning, the window, you don't tend to have your windows open and things. So I think it can. Oh, you're another Vicky. Ah, right. Okay, with a Y. Okay. All right. I shouldn't forget that now, should I? Now that I know that, I should. Maybe you've told me that before and I'd forgotten, but I shouldn't forget that now. But yeah, so today, because we've had really strange weather here the last couple of weeks. We've had rain, we've had storms, we've had everything, really bad weather. And it's been strange to see, because a lot of my family are in the UK. And when I see them on social media, etc., they're all in T-shirts and they're having barbecues and whatever. And we've been like, we've not even been able to go out the door sometimes because it's been raining that much. But not today. Today's been nice. I've been up on the sunroof today. And hi, the 411. Hi, Jill. Yeah, so I have managed to get some sun today. And it's funny because people think because you live in Spain, you're probably always in the sun, but you do get a bit sick of it. I know that sounds awful, but you actually do when you live here, especially the length of time I've lived here. I'm sure the first couple of years I didn't get fed up of it, but after a while you get a bit, because it's like, it's quite punishing, the sun, after a while, especially in the summer. In July and August, it's not nice, it's so hot, it's unpleasant when you're not on holiday, and you're trying to work through it. And I don't even do a physical job. I mean, I don't know how people get on when they've got physical jobs to do through the summer. But of course, a lot of things shut down in Spain through the summer, certainly in August. So, and there's a reason for it. But right, so you've still got time to get yourself a coffee or a tea or whatever you like to have. I'm on, oh my goodness, nearly dropped it then. I am on vino tonight, so cheers, because I just felt like it. I think it's something to do with the sun, to be honest. When I lived in the UK, I would never really drink unless you went to a restaurant, or a special occasion. I mean, I don't mean when I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, I drank a lot because that's what teenagers do, isn't it? Or they go out but as a later on, really, it was just, you'd have a bottle of wine if you went out. And I think it's to do with the weather and, of course, the price, because this nice wine that I like rosé wine. I prefer rosé wine. It's only about €2.90 for a bottle, and it's really nice wine. It's a Rioja, so it's sort of, it's not a good thing in a way, because you probably drink a bit more wine than you might normally if you've got to pay £20 a bottle for it. So I'm one of them people now. When I go to the UK, I'm like, everywhere we go, I'm going, well, how much? Because you just can't believe the difference in price. I think it's to do with the tax, is it? I don't know. Why is it so expensive for a bottle of wine in the UK? Even in a good old cuppa. So the 411's got a cuppa. Well, I like a cuppa sometimes as well. Vicki from DMV video, she's had enough sun for the day. Yeah, you do sort of get fed up of the sun, and it sounds awful to say that. Well, you'll know that if you're having a hot spell now, you'll understand that after a while it's quite nice to get a little bit of a breather. And in August here, it's relentless. The heat is relentless. It's like sooner you sort of open the front door and it's like, you know, this heat sort of like scorches you. And because in the house you've got air conditioning things. Air conditioning sometimes I think, I don't know if it's a good thing, because you're so comfortable in the house with the aircon on and everything. If you know, then you've got a big electric bill to face at the end of it. But you know, at the end of the day, you've got to be comfortable. To me, you've got to be comfortable in your house. Your house is the one place you've got to be comfortable. So, you know, if you have to put the aircon on, or you have to put the heating on, or whatever, you just have to do it. Or the thing is, if you're cold, you can put blankets over you or whatever. But if you're hot, there's not much you can do. You can have a cold shower. Probably in the summer, I probably have about 6 cold showers a day at least. You're just constantly in and out the shower. And I turn off my water heater in the summer, because the water's warm enough just without it actually being heated up. Do you know what I mean? Because it's so warm anyway, so water's tepid anyway. Gosh, I'm sorry, I'm going on. Can you have too many gins? I'm not a gin person. I like vodka. I do like a gin. I do like a gin every now and again, but my favourite stronger spirit, if you like, is vodka. But yeah, gosh, we are getting totally. I'm supposed to be talking about Gary Ridgeway, serial killer Sunday. Do you know, it's funny because today, hi Desi, hi. I thought I'm actually looking forward to this stream, even though it's to talk about this awful serial killer. Because I feel like lately the things that we're talking about, or the things that I'm talking about, if you like, and the videos that I'm making, this, you know, it's what happened to Nicola Bulley. You know, did Paul have anything to do with it? Did Emma? But it's conjecture, isn't it? We don't know. Then there's the Phil Schofield thing. Is he a child groomer? We don't know for certain, but we do know, really. But do you understand what I'm saying? There's no... I feel like I've sat and listened to so many people lying and saying things, and it's just so depressing. It was actually quite nice to research this case, which is done and dusted, and he has actually admitted to everything. Do you understand what I mean? It was like, well, at least I'm not like confused, thinking, oh, I'm not quite sure, you know, if he did it or if he didn't do it, and is he telling the truth? No, because in the end, the one good thing, at least, that Gary Ridgeway did, he did come out and admit to everything. So the dogs have started playing now. So there you go. What are you doing? Can't start playing at this time, not when I'm in the live stream. They sit there all day and don't do anything, and then as soon as I do a live stream. Are you going in the bathroom? Are you? So, yeah, so I thought, God, how weird that I'm actually looking forward to doing this stream, because it's a cut and dry thing now. You know, it took a long time to bring Gary Ridgeway to justice, but he has been brought to justice, and he has admitted to the things he did. So feels almost refreshing, you know. So, oh, you can't. Oh, don't you normally catch me like this? Well, I don't know. Right. I normally do a live on Friday night and Sunday night at 7 European time, which is 6 o'clock UK time. Virtually certain that I'm going to do a live those days, and then sometimes I do a spontaneous live if something, you know, sometimes I read something on the news, or I get involved in something, I get angry about something or sad about something, and then I end up doing a live. But yeah, they know when do you know what, Vicki? They're like kids. Dogs are like children. You know, if you've had kids or have kids, they could be there, they're just playing, they're doing whatever, they're not even speaking to you, they're not taking any notice of you. The phone rings, you start talking to your friend or whoever, and suddenly it's mom. Well, dogs are exactly the same. It's like, it's an attention thing. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. They want your attention all the time. But yeah, so Gary Ridgeway. So he's, they call him the Green River Killer. And the reason they call him the Green River Killer is certainly the first 5 of his victims were found in the Green River, which is, oh my goodness, where is the Green River? I can't believe I haven't. Oh, is it in Washington, the Green River? Well, that's where he is now. He's in the Washington State Penitentiary serving his sentence. Walla Walla, it's called. I mean, my geography of the UK is absolutely shit. So my geography of America is even worse because it's such a massive place. I don't know. But they were found in the Green River, his first 5 victims. And that's why they call him the Green River Killer. But actually, he didn't leave all his victims in the river. And he has admitted to 71 victims. 71. I mean, 71. You can't get your head around that, can you? And so that makes him the second most prolific serial killer in the US. I mean, we are like... in the UK, we have the most prolific serial killer, which is Dr. Shipman, who I did a video on, Dr. Harold Shipman, who killed over 200 people. They think, they don't know exactly. And I think the first most prolific serial killer in the US is Ted Bundy. And Gary Ridgway is the second one, from what he admits. He admits 71 murders, but even he... you'll see, because some of the videos that I'm going to play for you tonight, he didn't even remember a lot of his victims. So I think that's something that's really especially sad about this case. I mean, the good thing that he did was he admitted to the murders. But the bad thing was he actually killed so many people, he didn't even remember them. He didn't take any note. He didn't know their names. He knew where because these poor women and girls, young girls, he preyed on the vulnerable. He was a typical serial killer in that sense. He preyed on the vulnerable. He picked up sex workers and underage girls who were on the run, running away from home or whatever. They're the easiest victims, aren't they, to pick up? Hi, Lucia. Hi. Yeah, so he picked up the most vulnerable people, which is a shame. And, some people might say that that's the reason why he got away with it for so long, because it was 20 years since he was first on the police radar. It took 20 years to actually arrest Gary Ridgway and charge him. Now, there's a few things. Let me just show you a photo of him. Let's start off with a photo. Right, now I have to remember how I'm going to do this. Well, we're going to look at quite a few photos. Share screen. Okay, Gary Ridgway interviewed away. Oh, where's it actually gone, the pictures of him? Oh, it doesn't matter, I'll go on to... Because I want you to see how ordinary looking this guy is. To me, like I say, his actual nickname, if you like, is the Green River Killer. I always say Green Liver Killer. I don't know why. But he is... Why can I not find out to do that interview forgiveness? Let's see. Gosh, why am I so rubbish at this? I am so rubbish at this. Right, that's what I want to share. Right, sorry. You know you have to bear with me a little bit. Right, I can't actually get up the Hi Purple Star. So yeah, I will be showing you. I'll be showing you some videos of him. I've got them up, but for some reason I can't get the photos up. But for me, although his nickname is the Green River Killer, for me he's the ordinary killer. This guy is the most ordinary man that you could ever meet. You would not ever be scared of him. You know, if you worked with him, if he offered you a lift, if you met him in a bar, or he's just so ordinary. He's so unassuming. He's quite good looking, but not like, he's not really, you know, he's so sort of not really handsome or not really ugly. You know, he's just ordinary. He's an ordinary guy who, or, you know, I mean, he's now 73 years old. He's still alive. They always live a long time. I think they do get looked after so much in prison. But anyway, he's still alive. He's in Washington State Penitentiary, Walla Walla. He was arrested in 2001. And finally, DNA evidence connected him to all these killings. But he had been on the police radar for 20 years. 20 years. And when he was 16, he actually did stab a 6-year-old boy and nothing happened. And I couldn't find any information about this, which just struck, apart from the fact that he did it. So he's 16 years old. He lured a 6-year-old boy into the woods and stabbed him. And he told this boy he just wanted to see what it felt like to stab someone. But it's quite odd because actually later on his method of killing his victims, it wasn't stabbing. So, you know, it's sort of strange. But anyway, nothing came of that at all. Nothing happened. So there you go. I mean, there was, why he did nothing. You know, whenever you look at these killers, when you look back, it's like Edmund Kemper. He'd killed his grandparents when he was 16 years old. He was out of prison 4 years later or something. You know, why do they yeah. Hi Dave, hi Bob. Don't worry, you haven't missed anything. We've just been chatting and me trying to get technology working, which as usually tends to be quite difficult. But yeah, that's right. Gary was mild-mannered. He was just the least offensive man that you could imagine. And these are this is why we should never think that serial killers are. It was Ted Bundy said it himself. They're not sort of gibbering lunatics that come out at night at full moon. They're just normal people who live amongst us, you know. So, and the good thing about DNA, you know, what do you think? I was thinking about this and I thought, will we ever have again? Hopefully not. But, you know, because of the advances in DNA and everything, is that the end of the serial killer? Because will they get caught? Hi, Joe H. Hi. Will they get caught much sooner now? You know, because obviously in the 70s and 80s, that was the sort of golden era, if you like, of the serial killer, because there wasn't DNA wasn't so advanced, and also there wasn't connections between different countries or different states or different areas of, for example, the UK. Now, of course, everything's on the DNA databases, and even across countries, never mind across sort of individual, not only in individual countries, but the DNA database, you can reach out to other countries as well now. So does that mean that we won't have any more serial killers? Will they always get caught quite early on? Yeah, I wonder. Okay, so let's go back to Gary Ridgway. Let's just talk about where he was born, etc., and his early life. Well, as I say, when he was 16, he stabbed a 6-year-old boy who did survive, and said that he'd said to him, I just wanted to know what it felt like. He lured him into the woods, stabbed him, nothing came of it. Now, he then went on to get married. He got married in 1969, and he to his sort of childhood girlfriend or his teenage girlfriend, and he joined the Navy. And he was deployed to Vietnam. Now, they say that that's where he used a lot of sex workers. Now, something else to say about him, and you'll know that this really irritates me because there's a lot of blame put on his mother. Of course, it's all his mother's fault. It's always the mother's fault, isn't it? His mother apparently was a very attractive woman. They say she was overtly sexual. She was this, she was that. But do you know what? I mean, how many mothers could that? I think they always sort of hang that on the mother, don't they? You don't hear them talking about again. You can't find anything out about the father. What was the father like? I don't know. Now, they did say that Gary Ridgway, he wet the bed until he was about 13 years old, 14 years old, which of course is, a sign of emotional disturbance. But to me, I think that's a sign of abuse. So it makes you wonder, was he being abused for him to do that? For someone to wet the bed until they're that age, right into teenage years, there's normally some abuse going on. And then what psychologists say is that his mother, every time he did that, she would, clean him like in a sexual way, and he admitted that he had sexual thoughts towards his mother and stuff. I don't really want to get into that. I think that's something they quite often hang on serial killers. And to me, I'd be more interested in why was he wetting the bed still till he was 14? That seems to me that there was probably some abuse going on somewhere along the line. And where was his dad? What do I know about his dad? Nothing. Can't find anything out about his dad. Anyway, he joined the Navy, and he used a lot of sex work. He frequented sex workers, and he contracted STDs as a result. And then I think when he got home, his wife admitted to an affair that she'd had while he'd been deployed over in Vietnam. So that was the end of that. The marriage was over within a year. His first marriage was over within a year. During his second marriage, he got married again. So again, he's one of these men. He was married 3 times in total. So, he obviously, women found him attractive enough to marry him. So he managed to charm 3 women at least. And during his second marriage, he became very religious, and he would get quite, he would frequently cry after sermons or after reading the Bible. But at the same time as he was getting religious, he was still using sex workers, and all his wives, his first 2 wives anyway, said he did quite like, he liked to, I don't know, you never know what you can say on YouTube or not, but he was obsessed with sex. He demanded sex many times a day, and he also liked to do it out in the in the woods or out in the open, etc. I think what we would call it now, it's DOGGING. He quite liked that, but I don't know if there had to be other people there involved in it, but he liked to do it out in the outdoors. And it turned out that with his second wife, quite often he would take her to places, well, she didn't know, obviously, but he would take her to places where he'd left his victims. And so that's a bit revolting. Yeah. Okay. So he had this insatiable appetite for sex, but it conflict. I think most of the psychologists that talk about him, they talk about his conflict between lust and religion. He was always conflicted, and we will. I think that is true. I think he had this, it was like what he thought he should do and what he wanted to do. And we'll see that at the end. But, okay. And the problem is, although he did admit to 71 murders in the end, I think there was probably a lot more, because he couldn't even remember the amount of people that he'd killed. They weren't people to him. He admitted that he had a very low IQ, Gary Ridgway, which is quite unusual in a serial killer, because quite often they have a very high IQ. But his was the opposite. It was a low IQ. He admitted he didn't even remember these people, these poor women, and he had no, quite often serial killers, they'll operate within an ethnic group, or, they have their types or whatever. He didn't. So it didn't matter if they were, what ethnicity they were. It did, as long as they just had to be vulnerable. They could be young, older, whatever, dark, blonde, it didn't matter. They were vulnerable. If he could get them in his car or his van or whatever, then they were fair enough. And many of his bodies, or the bodies of his victims, they were found posed. This is a sure sign, isn't it, of a serial killer. They tend to pose their victims. And you get people like Ian Huntley, he posed Holly and Jessica. And Ian Huntley would definitely have become a serial killer if he hadn't have been caught, because he was, all the things he did were like traits of a serial killer. So yeah, it's a good thing, really. Quite optimistic that hopefully in the future we maybe won't get these serial killers because of DNA advances. It's what caught him, it's what caught many of them in the end. Hi Chumba, don't worry about being late, and you can always catch up on it later as well. So that was his second wife. That didn't last very long either. But then he married again. He's now his third wife. That he married in 1988. And I'm sort of just going into his wives here, but before that was an interesting thing. We're going to look at some interviews with her today, because after he married her in 1988, he only had 3 victims after that. He was, it seems like she did actually quite make him happy. And she says now, I feel like I saved a lot of lives by loving him and making him happy. Anyway, 2 of his victims that he admitted to and that were found have not been identified. Now, this Green River killer, let's go back to why he's called the Green River Killer, even though he didn't leave all his victims in a river. He was nicknamed that right in the early days, because really this story sort of starts, if you like, or the unraveling of this case starts when a guy went out to have a cigarette by the banks of the river where he worked in a plastic plant, I think it was, and saw what he thought was a mannequin in the water. And then he realised it wasn't a mannequin, it was a woman. And he called the police. The police came out, and they found actually in that river on that day, they found that one that had been reported, that lady. And then they also saw another one on the same day, just up the river. So it was like a dumping ground. He'd probably not done those on the same day, but he'd used that as a dumping ground, probably for the DNA too, because you put someone in the river and it's very difficult then after that for DNA. And the policeman that I've seen the interviews of him talking about, let me just find about where it says about that. Got all these notes. He said that this woman, she was lying there, and she was weighted down by boulders, but one of her hands was like sticking up, and it was like waving as the tide was going in and out. The river was flowing backwards and forwards. Her hand was waving, and said it was as if she was waving to say, I'm here, please help me, which of course, you know, it was too late because the poor lady was dead. But he said that's what it felt like to him. And that detective, that's what started him off on this case. They then found 5 victims in that river, but a lot of the other victims were found in woodland. Now we're going to watch a video with a young lad talking. This poor young lad, I wonder how it affected him, but he's talking about he found one of the bodies, and I just wanted to share this with you. Oh gosh, why can I never find the one that I want to find? Let's see, it's not that one, is it? Right, it's this one. So it's the day. Right, so this poor young lad actually found one of the bodies.
Mom dropped me and a friend off to, start collecting cans there, and she'd meet us back later. Well, I went down the hill. I picked up a few cans and walked about up the canyon a little and discovered the bones.
Just lying there out in the open?
They were like leg bones, 2 long leg bones. I picked one up, just to see if it was a bone. It was, and I set it back down, picked up a stick, started, moving in the air, scattered up, above the skull. And I must have triggered something because the skull fell, come rolling down. And then that's when I just kind of sat there for a minute and started screaming for my friend.
Was it in a real wooded area or bushy, or was it open?
Well, it wasn't too wooded. It wasn't open. It was like the canyon with the trees on the side. That was about it. So that's all I can think.
And this looked like what, a riverbed or?
Old creek bed, dried up creek bed. About like that. And then they had above the skull with some more bones of the skeleton.
So you definitely thought it was human?
Oh yeah, there was no doubt about it. I couldn't say if it was a girl or a boy, but I know it wasn't a man because the teeth were small. It was weird.
Any clothes or anything else around?
Just bones.
Well, what did you think about this?
I didn't know what to think. I couldn't believe it. I was just shocked. Going out collecting cans and find a body, it's just unbelievable. So I ran up and got my friend, and he weighed down a guy, and he went and called the cops.
Was it pretty scary?
Oh yeah, definitely scary.
You've been reading about the Green River.
Oh yeah, for a long time.
Think that might be anything close?
Well, I'm not sure if it is or not. The cops ain't even sure just yet, but I have a pretty good feeling it might be. Because
yeah, that poor lad. I mean, imagine, you're out there and he's just there in the woods and whatever, and then he finds a body, and did you hear him there say he thought it might be about the Green River killer had sort of picked up people knew about it by then. They knew about this killer that was women were disappearing, etc. Now, ironically enough, I want to just go back to talking about the body with the hand waving. That lady was called Marcia Chapman. And the other body that they found up the river from her was only 16-year-old girl. They found Opal Mills that they found 2 days later. So they actually found 3 victims in the river, and then 2 more as well. That's why he's called the Green River Killer, even though many of his other victims, as you see from that young lad was saying, they were actually found in woodlands and things. Now, what he did, he had dump sites, so they tended to be in clusters. And what they mean by that is, so he would have a site where he would dump one body, and then he'd dump the next body there as well, and the next body, etc. And so he might have a cluster of maybe 5 or 6 bodies. And this is where it's interesting, because the detectives and the psychologists they interviewed Ted Bundy about this, and Ted Bundy gave some insight about this case because he said to the police, he will have dump sites, he will have places where he's going to deposit several bodies. Yeah, maybe he did become a forensic scientist, Barb. Yeah, maybe he did. We never get to know, do we, the sort of final story. I mean, how old would it, he'd be sort of probably in his 40s now, that boy. I hope he managed to get over that trauma. But anyway, so so Ted Bundy, do you know about Ted Bundy? I've got a video on my channel about Ted Bundy, but I made it quite a long time ago. I'd probably like to make another one about him. He, to me, is one of the most fascinating serial killers as well. But yeah, he gave the police a lot of insights, and the thing as well that he told the police was what you should do if you find one body or two bodies, you should hang around that area because he will come back to those bodies. Because I'm just warning you now, this is not very nice. I mean, none of it's very nice, but this is especially not very nice. He did revisit the bodies and continue to have sex with them after they were dead. He would go back many times to these dump sites and to these poor women and desecrate their bodies. And what's really horrible about it as well, I mean, it's bad, it wasn't that he liked necrophilia. That wasn't his, oh gosh, I've said that word, I'll probably get thrown off YouTube, but never mind. I've said it now, I can't take it back, but it wasn't even that did anything for him. It didn't, he did it, but it was because, one, he wouldn't have to pay for sex. Two, he wouldn't have to take the chance, if you like. It was safe to go back to a dead body again and again, because it was safe, because he wouldn't have to take the chance of trying to get another woman, to get in the car with him. So I think what we're going to look at now, because it sort of comes to that, is how he explained to one psychologist that he would get the bodies in his car. So let's have a look at that. He had different ruses, this woman calls about, that's interviewing him. So he would have different ways of getting women into his car and making them relax, etc. He would think of different ways. I think he is definitely, if you were a sex worker, I mean, do you know what? In Spain, we have a lot of sex workers that are out, just on, and there's every time I ever drive past one of them, there's not a time that I don't think, well, for the grace of God, because you know what, you people are down on sex workers and that, but you just don't know what their circumstances are. They might have been trafficked. They might be trying to just earn money for their children. They might be on drugs a bit. People don't do it voluntarily. They don't do it because they think, oh, that'll be a good thing to do. They get involved in it for whatever reason. And, we shouldn't be down on them because they do it for whatever reason. Now, he would be, I expect if you were a sex worker and he pulled up beside you, that he just was so ordinary, so unthreatening. He'd be the last person that you would be worried about getting in the car with. But he is, he was the scariest. And yes, Barb, Bundy was clever like that as well. So they all have their modus operandi to get someone into a car. Bundy did that, yeah. He made people, he quite often pretended that he had a broken arm to get a woman to help him with something. And what's really especially irritating about these people is they rely on the good nature of the women that they're abducting. If the women were a bit more sort of not so nice, they wouldn't get in the car, they wouldn't help him, they wouldn't get in the car with them, etc. So they rely on them being nice, which is even more horrible. But right, okay, now I'm going to show this, aren't I? So I want to see him talking about what his modus operandi, how he got the women to get in his car.
You went to a lot of work to create these ruses. And it sounds to me like you had a series of that you would bring out and you would use to make you appear normal to some of these women. And it had to be a way of you deciding, even though it was just like that, which ruse would work with which woman. I mean, you had to have a way of feeling them out and saying, I think ruse number 1, 2, 3 will work with this woman. Explain that process to me.
Well, one of them was, a woman would get in the car.
She's already in the car?
She's in the car. Let's say she's always in the car. We're driving down the road, and she wants to see my ID. So I whipped out my ID, and with my ID would be I'd put my finger over my driver's license to hide my name.
Mm-hmm.
But on the opposite side was pictures. And a picture of my son. And they would see my son, and they would know I was probably a normal person.
But you were really using your son as part of your ruse.
Because only all the time I didn't want to picture my ex-wife there, so I had to have a picture of my son.
Sure, you had to make it sound good.
I had a driver's license on one side, my ID, and then when I showed and then the next picture was my son. So that was, and in the vehicle I had always had some, not always, but had some of my son's stuff in it, that he left in there, or some Star Wars or something like that, so there was like a family setting.
In your vehicle.
Yeah, so every time I opened up my wallet, I had my name, flip it over, and there's my ID and my son's picture on the back side, and they'd see that, and that would lower any big defenses.
Mm-hmm.
And kids is.
Yeah, so how horrible is that? So he would use his son's picture. So sometimes the girls would obviously want to see some ID or whatever. Probably at the time there was probably rumors about this serial killer going around, so they'd ask to see some ID. He'd open his ID, hide his name, but there'd be a photo of his son in there. In fact, at least on one occasion, he actually had his son with him when he picked up a sex worker and murdered her, and he left his son in the car and went off into the woods with the sex worker. I mean, his son was very young, obviously, at the time. So, yeah, he used his son. If he took them back to his house, there would be photos of his son all over the place. So there would be toys. That's how he put people at their ease. He put these women at their ease to make them trust more. And Barbie didn't only target sex workers, but the other people he targeted, the other girls he targeted, were like runaways from home. So there'd be some, young girls that had run away from home, hitchhiking. So it was either sex workers or teenage runaways that he would target. Now, well, I want to tell you about, this is how he should have been caught. He should have been caught a long time before, apart from the fact he'd stabbed that 6-year-old boy. But there was one victim that people literally arrived at his door. Now, why can I find her name now? Her name was Maria. I know her name was Maria. I can't remember her surname, but I've got it all written down here. Yeah. On the 30th of April in 1983. So bearing in mind he was arrested in 2001. So in 1983, he abducted Maria Melva from a restaurant. she was there with her boyfriend. She went to make a phone call. I think she was a sex worker. I think she was. But how he got talking to her or whatever, the boyfriend says he went to make a phone call, and when he came back, she wasn't there. And he saw her get in the truck with Ridgeway. Reading between the lines, I think this was probably, Ridgeway probably picked her up for sex. And I think that the boyfriend, from other things that I've read, he knew she was a sex worker, and he was like her PIMP. So I think there's a bit more to it than that. But anyway, she got picked up by Ridgeway. The boyfriend followed behind. So I think this is what the boyfriend did. He would he accepted her going out and doing the sex work, where he would go out and keep an eye on her. And then they came to some traffic lights, and he got stuck behind in the traffic lights. And when he got through, he couldn't find the car again. Anyway, didn't hear from her. She didn't come back to where they were supposed to meet back up again. So he phoned some of her family and asked them to come out and help him look for her. As they were just driving around the area, they actually saw the car parked up. He recognised the car that she'd driven off with, and it was just in the neighbourhood as they were driving around. So they phoned the police. The police turned up at Gary Ridgway's door, knocked on the door, said that they were looking for this woman. He said, "Oh, there's nobody here, just me." And they did not enter the property. They did not enter the property. And that girl, Maria, 30 years later, so even after he was arrested, 30 years later, in 2013, Maria was found, or Maria's remains were found in Woodland. So why is that? Why did the police not press it and demand that? I know they need for a search warrant or whatever, they need evidence, don't they? So, but the evidence was that the boyfriend had said that he'd seen this truck or whatever it was pick up Maria and take her off. But because Maria was a sex worker, that's what I think's behind it. The police are just like, they don't take it so seriously. And Gary Ridgway was so ordinary, so sort of, they've probably knocked on his door, he's come to the door, and they're thinking, well, he seems so ordinary and he's got no criminal record, etc. So that was the first time that he could have been caught. There were many times after that he could have been caught, but there was no DNA evidence. That's the trouble. He was on the police radar, obviously, from then on. He took lie detector tests and passed. So, he knew how to do that. I think he was so ordinary. He could even pass a lie detector test. He even admitted, to be fair to him, he even admitted himself, he didn't feel any empathy for his victims. He didn't know what it felt like to love someone or whatever. He didn't understand those emotions. So he passed the lie detector test. And okay, so but then he was on the police radar, but it was another 20 years nearly before they actually caught him, though there was a particular detective that was really sort of looking into him and trying his best to find a way of linking him to these murders, but it wasn't until advances in DNA. As soon as the advances in DNA and the DNA that was taken from that very first victim that was found, I think it was Marsha, wasn't it, in the river, the one that was waving, it was the DNA from her that linked Gary Ridgway in the end. And then they did arrest him immediately. Okay, so let me just have a look what I've said and what I still want to say about the earlier bits. Okay. Now, so I think, as I said to you earlier, he is now 73 years old. So I think I found the Found the right. So I found I found the page that I had ready with. I want to show you the photos of him. There's photos of him here from when he was young to now, to nowadays. Okay, now you should be able to see this page. Let me just check. Yeah, you can. So we've got quite a lot of photos of him there from all different. So this is, do you see this one? This is the photo of him when he was arrested. So yeah, he was quite young, quite attractive, guys. He's like, I don't know if he's exactly handsome, but he's like, he's just Mr. Average, isn't he? He's not handsome, he's not ugly, he just looks sort of, you know, like a normal guy. Now, this is how he looks now. Obviously, he's in his 70s now. Yeah, you can see. What I found difficult about this case as well, though, is I can't show all the victims because I like to concentrate on the victims, but there's so many of them, you know, I just can't. So it's just impossible to put them all up there, unfortunately. Anyway, so that's him. You can see how unassuming he looked when he was younger. Just looks like your Joe Average, your guy next door. You would never think anything strange about him. Yes, David, that's true. That the detective that worked on this case, which I thought I had his name somewhere, and I probably have, but by the time I've looked for it, he said, you know, people don't understand picking up all these, but you know, you get totally involved in these cases. So for 20 years until he actually, because at one point when he knew it was him, but he had no proof, he actually said to Gary Ridgeway, we know it's you bar steward, and we're going to get you. And it took a while to get him, but they did get him in the end. And he said, like my marriage, you know, these detectives that deal with these sort of cases, their marriages go out the window because, I mean, his didn't. He did end up staying with his wife, but he said, I was at home, but I wasn't really there because my whole days. And now I think we understand that a bit, don't we? Because, you know, this with, you know, what I was saying earlier, that it's been almost quite nice to prepare for this because it's something that we know for sure, instead of all that, you know, with the Nicola Bulley case, and is Philip Schofield a child lover, or what, you know, all the possibilities. This is cut and dried. So if you were actually working on a case like that and he's trying to solve those crimes and he's more or less pretty sure that somebody is guilty, but you can't prove it, it must consume your whole life. It must do. You can't help it, can you? You couldn't help it. Yeah, so 411. What the thing is, what I don't know much about this case, 411. What is Caitlin? She's only 14, and you're saying that the police don't seem bothered in the slightest. But why are she? You know, you seem to. She seems to have run away before and come back. And what is the issue? I don't know. I don't know anything about this case. What is the problem for her at home? Let me know, because I just don't know enough information about that case. When I know the information, then I can do something, you know, maybe do a video on it or do something about it. But I honestly just don't know the situation. What is the situation? Is it the stepfather? Or is that, well, I'm saying the stepfather. I don't even know if she's got a stepfather. This is a problem. I just don't know anything about Caitlin. But if you let me know about her, you know, let me know the information, then I'll be happy to do a video about Caitlin. Okay, so he was finally arrested in 2001 because of the DNA evidence, and he was given multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole. So it seems that he will never come out of prison, though apparently there is currently in Washington there's a possible change in the law coming up that means that he might be let out. But he himself has admitted to psychologists and that if he was ever let out of prison, he would probably do it again. So, well, at least he's admitted that. So surely they wouldn't let him out, no matter how old he is. Even if he's in his 80s, you can still kill someone. So so Caitlin is vulnerable and going through struggles with being bullied. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Okay. So apparently he spends 23 hours a day in isolation. I think, he quite likes being in isolation. So, I don't know if he's got a very low IQ, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe he doesn't need much stimulation. I don't know. Okay, now, what else did I want to tell you? Oh, yes, so I wanted to tell you I wanted to show you this when he's pleading guilty to his crimes. It sort of really struck me, this, because at least he did plead guilty, but it's just this litany. So many people, let's have a listen to this. Oh gosh, I've got to change it on here, haven't I? I always forget that. I've got to do that. Screen. Yeah. So this is him pleading guilty. Now watch how emotionless he is. He never shows any emotion. There's one time that he shows emotion. I'm going to show you the video of that. But through all this, he's just, yes, guilty, guilty, guilty. No emotion whatsoever.
And each paragraph of that document with your lawyers?
Yes.
Is there any portion of that document that you do not understand?
No.
Before we proceed any further, are there any additional questions that you'd like to ask of the prosecuting attorney before we proceed?
No.
Are there any questions you'd like to ask of me before we proceed?
No.
Mr. Ridgeway, have you had enough time to discuss what you are doing today with your attorneys?
Yes, I have.
Mr. Ridgeway, have you had any drugs, alcohol, or medication in the last 24 hours?
No.
Are you presently under the influence of any drug? County prosecuting attorney, and is limited to that office. Desire to plead guilty to the 48 charges of aggravated murder in the first degree because you believe that you are guilty of each of those offenses.
Yes.
Mr. Ridgeway, I'm going to ask you at this time, how do you plead to the charge of aggravated murder in the first degree as charged in count 1 for the death of Wendy Lee Caulfield?
Guilty.
Mr. Ridgeway, how do you plead to
Guilty.
How do you plead to the charge of aggravated murder in the first degree as charged in count 16 for the death of Andrea Childers?
Guilty.
Doe B16.
Guilty.
How do you plead Roberta J. Hayes?
Guilty.
Gosh.
How do you 42 for the death of Kim L. Nelson?
Guilty.
How do you knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily? I have further reviewed the second amended information.
So you can that video is available on YouTube. Obviously, I've just showed you a little bit of it, but the judge just goes through all the different ones: guilty, 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 etc. So imagine going through 40, because 49, although he confessed to 71 murders, 49 he was in, 48 on that day, but one more later on. Hang on, sorry. Stop that. Why is that coming out? Sorry, that video's starting and I'm not ready to start it yet. Okay, so yeah, so he just motionless, guilty. The judge asked him, are you of such another victim, guilty, guilty, guilty. No emotion, nothing all the way through it. But okay, so then what I want to show you now, which I think is really important, which because when it, so you can imagine, so he's been accused of 48 murders. When it comes to the victim's impact statement, so he has to sit there then and listen to what the families have got to say, you know, about this, you know, the impact on their family statements. And he sat and listened, and he looked, to be fair, looked at them, but he showed no emotion until. So I really, this guy who was the father, I think, of one of the victims, I think this is nice what he does. And I do believe in forgiveness. At the end of the day, he meet his maker, and he'll have to, when he finally meets his maker, he'll have to atone for whatever. But listen to this. This is really, oh gosh, of course I've got to turn it on. I always forget to turn it on, but never mind. Let me just, I've got to present it, haven't I? Share screen. So,
Possible death penalty. Mr. Ridgeway, how do you plead to the charge of aggravated murder in the first degree as charged in count 2?
Guilty, guilty, guilty.
It's like he didn't have any remorse at all for what he had done. You know, he killed so many people, he didn't remember who they were, what they looked like. I just couldn't believe that somebody could kill all those people and not remember them.
Neither could the angry relatives of his victims, who were invited to speak in court when Ridgeway was sentenced to life without parole on December 18th, 2003.
You had said your memory, when it comes to all of the women you took, was gone. Our memory is not. In your words, you said that they didn't mean anything to you, but she meant everything to us.
She was a mother, she was a wife, she was a sister.
So he sat through all these victim impact statements, and although he turned his head and he did listen to them and that, but he didn't show any emotion. But there's one coming up now where he does show some emotion.
And we miss her.
Gary Ridgeway sat there stone-faced as victims' relatives damned him and mocked him.
He's an animal. I wish for him to have a long, suffering, cruel death.
He's gonna go to hell, and that's where he belongs.
But then the emotionless facade finally cracked when the father of one of his victims appeared to surprise him with a dose of human kindness.
Mr. Ridgeway, there are people here that hate you. I'm not one of them. You've made it difficult to live up to what I believe, and that is what God says to do, and that's to forgive. You are forgiven, sir.
Yeah, so the only time he showed any emotion was when that guy stood up and said, I forgive you. It made me cry actually earlier when I was watching it, and it's making me emotional now, because that guy who lost his daughter to Gary Ridgeway, he stood up and said, I forgive you. And that's the only time that Gary Ridgeway showed emotion. So that's the conflict that he had between the things he did, but he, you know, it didn't finally make him like emotional. And I think that's very powerful, because I do believe that it doesn't matter what you do in this life, and you might think you've gotten away with it, but when you come to meet your judgment day, whatever you believe in, whatever you call God, there's all different things we might believe in. We all believe in different religions, or I don't believe in any religion, but I do believe in God. Whoever it is or whatever it is, there's an accounting that we all have to face for things that we've done. I've done bad things in my life. I haven't murdered a load of women, but I have done bad things. I've done things that I shouldn't have done, and I wish I hadn't done. And I've paid for them in this life sometimes, because karma, of course, can get you in this life. But you're gonna get somewhere along the line. You might think you've gotten away with things, but you don't get away with things. Not in my opinion, anyway. I don't believe that. And that guy, that father that stood up and forgave him, I thought it was beautiful. I really did, because that takes some doing, to forgive someone who's, taken your loved one off this earth. But there you go. That made him a better person, didn't it? So, right. Oh, so I've got one more video that I want to show you. So this third lady that he married. Now, if you're out there watching and you're a woman and you might think you've had some bad luck with men, or you've picked the wrong ones, we all feel like something, oh God, I've picked the wrong one. Not like this woman. So the first husband she had, bless her, was English, actually. She's American, obviously, but she had an English husband who abused her for years, so she suffered a lot of domestic abuse. And then later on, she met Gary Ridgeway. And, she thought she'd won the lottery because he was perfect. And to be fair, I think he did love her, because people thought the Green River Killer had stopped killing, because they were just, he did. The 13 years that he was with his third wife, 13, there were 3 victims, which I know 3 is bad enough, but it was nothing like what he was doing before, where he was killing a victim more or less once a month, really, he was doing before that. So this lady fell in love with Gary, and Gary did seem to fall in love with her. And he said that that's the first time that he'd ever really felt proper emotion for people. So let's have a look at her being interviewed. I found it fascinating, because I thought there was one that she didn't have any idea. She said there was one time she came home and the carpet had gone out of the house. And he said that he'd had an accident with something on the carpet, and she thinks that was probably because he'd killed a victim there and he'd removed the carpet for DNA or whatever. But she said apart from that, really, she had no reason to ever think, that he was doing these things. He was perfect. She had daughters and grandchildren. Imagine that, afterwards she was saying, he was around my daughters, he was around my grandchildren. Same with Ted Bundy. One of the partners he had a daughter that, it chills you to the bone, really, to think that they were around them in this family atmosphere, and all the time they were going out and murdering these poor women and young girls. But let's listen to her, because I find it fascinating. I just think, gosh, as I say, I think I've made bad choices sometimes with men in my life, but I don't think I've ever chosen a serial killer. Not yet, anyway. You never know. There's always time. But let's see. Yeah.
Gary pled guilty to 48 murders in all. For Judith, it was inconceivable. Her life were spent with the most prolific serial killer in the history of the United States.
How could he have done something like that?
And as Judith...
So, yeah, imagine that. So 13 years she was with him, and she thought he was you know, she thought he was loving, kind. You know, it was the 13 happiest years of her life. Oh, here's one of my dogs now. Hey, let's see if we can get you on camera. Come here. Come here. I don't think you can see him. He's just out of camera unless I just, maybe I can. Who's that? Who's that? Come here. Oh, he's giving me a big cuddle. Oh, there you go. You can see him now. This is Riley, he's called. He's a white Podenco. That's a Spanish type of dog. But anyway. So, yeah, what do you think? What do you think about Gary Ridgway? Do you think we'll ever have another Gary Ridgway, Ted Bundy, because of DNA advances now, Ed Kemper, all these serial killers, even from Britain, like you've got your Dennis Nielsen. I mean, we recently, who have we had? Peter Tobin, etc. Do you think that because of the DNA advances now, we're not likely to have these kind of serial killers again? Or do you think that there are serial killers operating? You know, are the police dealing better now with SEX workers as well? Because I think SEX workers were sort of pushed into the background before and not really wasn't really taken seriously. I think in Britain that was changed with the Yorkshire Ripper, which I think I'm going to do. That'll be my next serial killer Sunday. I'm going to do Peter Sutcliffe next week. I mean, his name, the 411, his name is Riley. And he's a white Podenco. He's a wimp. He's an absolute wimp. He's a baby. You know, we've got 3 dogs in this house, and Riley is like one. He's just a softie. He's just a total softie. But yeah, he is cute. He is cute. Yeah, he likes his hugs, don't you, Riley? You like your hugs. He's looking at me. His ears are going like that. So Podencos have these massive ears. But anyway. So that's it. So that's Gary Ridgway. Thank you so much for listening to me waffling on about him. I hope you found it interesting. Chumba says, I think we'll always have killers, Chumba. But what I'm thinking is, will we have serial killers like him? I mean, bearing in mind, 71 women he's confessed to killing. Would anyone be able to get away with that again now? Because, as Barb says, it's not only the DNA and the family DNA and the cell phone technology and etc. I mean, there'll always be individual murders. But serial murders like that, will they be more difficult now to get away with it for so long? There'll always be them because there's something wrong with these people. That, you know, people are born that way, I think. And there'll always be those kind of people. But will they not be able to get away with it for so long as they used to be able to get away with it? Will they get caught more quickly, you know, within just a couple of murders rather than it going on for 71? Imagine being responsible for 71 souls. He's going to have a lot to account for, I think, in the next life, in my opinion. Oh, so Vicky, you've got a Shih Tzu called Lily. Oh, I love Shih Tzus. Well, I love all dogs, but Lily's a lovely little name. Yeah. Yeah. So there'll always be serial killers. I agree, David Matheson. There'll always be serial killers, but I think there's a much higher chance of them being caught now, isn't there, because of DNA, etc. So surely they can't. And you know, Finola, you're right. When you talk about picking up vibes, I think I'm quite sensitive to people. But I think with Gary Ridgway, there's something, it's almost because he is so nondescript. You don't even get that bad vibe from him. You don't get any vibe from him. It's like a void, isn't it? It's like, sometimes I get bad vibes from people or good vibes from people. But I think with Gary Ridgway, you just feel he was so inoffensive. So, just won't worry about him at all, would you? But That's why I think of him as the ordinary serial killer, or the, I don't know, nondescript serial killer. But he took, you know, at least 71 souls from this earth. It's unbelievable, isn't it? That's a lot of people. And, you know, as I always say, when you take one victim, you're actually, there's at least another 5 victims probably around that. So you've got the victim itself that you've taken away from the world. And then there's the family. And there's going to be at least 2-3 people. Then there's the friends. You know, the effect is like a ripple going out. So you're responsible for all that misery. You know, how do you even live with that unless you are like low IQ or a psychopath that you don't give a shit or whatever? How do you sleep at night? How do you give your children a hug? You know, and they do it. They do it. They go home, they give their children a hug, and they've just murdered another child, but it doesn't matter because it wasn't their child. Anyway. Oh. Okay, right, I'm off. I'm going to go and get something to eat. But thank you so much for being with me. Now, I've this week I'll be doing some more back to basics about Nicola Bulley, etc. I'm hoping I don't have to do another video about Philip Schofield. I just don't even like thinking about him. But I will be doing. I've got another couple of cases that people have brought to my attention that I want to look at. Yeah, Chad and Laurie. Oh, Barb. I mean, Laurie Daybell Vallow, or whatever her name is. She's unusual. She's the double deviant, isn't she? Because she's a woman. It's unusual for a woman to do these things. It's not unheard of, but it's unusual. For Laurie to kill her own children, you know, and well, who knows? There's so many people, isn't there? Then there's, anyway, gosh, that is a very incredible case. But she thought the world was going to end, didn't she? She thought the world was going to end. She was her and Chad, they were the chosen ones. And Chad's trial is next year, yeah, because they decided to do it separately, didn't they? So that'll be interesting. Okay, but I'm definitely going now. So thank you. So watch out for the good. So next week, not tomorrow, but a week on Monday, I am going on location. I'm going somewhere to look into a crime. Not look exactly going to talk about a crime. Going to the scene of a famous crime that you'll all know about, and do some lives and see if we can, you know, get a different perspective on things. But thank you so much. Thank you. So I will see you soon. Remember to always live and love very wisely. And until I see you again, may your God always go with you. Thank you.